August 20th, 2012, London, Mayfair, 3:16 in the afternoon. A black car stops outside Crockford's casino, the oldest private gambling club in the world, founded in 1828. Out steps a petite Chinese woman in a white t-shirt and black baseball cap. White nail polish, no jewelry. To the doormen in tuxedos, to the staff who escort her through marble hallways, she looks like nobody special. Just another high roller's companion, maybe. Someone's girlfriend. In a private gaming room, Phil Ivey is waiting. 10 World Series of Poker bracelets, 50 million in career earnings. His face has been on magazine covers around the world. Tonight, none of that matters. Tonight, he follows her instructions. When to bet, how much, which hands to push, and which to pull back. The most famous poker player on earth, taking orders from a woman in a baseball cap. At 10:13 p.m., a dealer named Kathy starts a fresh shoe. 8 decks of purple Jamaica cards. For the past 7 hours, something strange has been happening at this table. Something Kathy doesn't understand. The Chinese woman keeps asking her to rotate certain cards. Turn the 7s this way. Flip the 8s. Good luck rituals, Kathy assumes. High rollers are superstitious. The casino pays her to keep them happy. So, Kathy rotates the cards one by one, exactly as requested. Each rotation is a piece of a system. A system that shouldn't exist. A system designed to beat baccarat, a game where the house always wins. 21 hours later, the session ends. Total winnings, £7.8 million, 12 million American dollars. One casino, one night. Surveillance cameras recorded every hand. Pit bosses watched the chips stack higher and higher. Nobody understood what was happening. When Ivey asks to cash out, Crockford's refuses to pay. Someone in the back office has rewound the tapes. Someone has noticed. The rotated cards, the impossible winning percentage, the woman who speaks Mandarin to the dealers and never once touches the chips. Her name is Chung Yin Sun. Casinos on 4 continents call her the Queen of Sorts. Phil Ivey has a different name for her, the Baccarat Machine. You probably know the Phil Ivey edge sorting story, what some have called the closest thing to a legal casino heist. We made a video about it. But here is what most people don't know. Ivey wasn't the mastermind. He was the bankroll, the famous face, the woman who invented the technique, who recruited him, who orchestrated over $30 million in winnings across 4 continents. She stayed invisible. This is her story. It starts 6 years before Crockford's. It starts with revenge. Northern China, 1976. Kelly Sun came into the world during the final years of Mao's Cultural Revolution. Her family had money, real money, the kind built across generations in banking and commerce. Then the Communist Party decided that wealth was a crime. Men like her father were sent to labor camps for re-education. Bank accounts were frozen. Properties were seized. By the time Kelly was old enough to understand what had happened, her family existed in the long shadow of what they used to be. Comfortable, yes, but diminished. Her father rarely spoke about the camps. Some things you bury and never dig up. At 15, a fake ID got her onto a Hong Kong gambling cruise. The lights, the noise, the rush of chips sliding across felt. Something clicked inside her brain that night. Macau came next, while still underage. One evening at a baccarat table, she sat down with $1,500. 3 hours later, she walked away with $150,000. 100-to-1 return. The feeling was electric. With part of the winnings, she bought herself a Rolex. Weeks later, a stranger complimented the watch. She slipped it off her wrist and handed it over. That easy. Money meant nothing. The chase meant everything. What followed was a decade of destruction. Paris, Monte Carlo, Las Vegas, Singapore, Macau, again and again. The wins were occasional. The losses were constant. By her late 20s, Kelly had burned through approximately $20 million of her father's remaining fortune. Casino hosts across the world knew her by name. They sent cars to the airport, comped the penthouse suites, poured champagne while she hemorrhaged money at the tables. To them, she was the perfect customer, a high roller who always came back, always chased her losses, always believed the next session would turn it around. What they saw was a gambling addict with a depleted trust fund. What they missed was the intelligence behind her eyes, watching, cataloging, waiting for something she could exploit. In 2006, at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas, a friend asked for a favor. She needed money to gamble but had no credit with the casino. Kelly signed a marker, a casino IOU, for $100,000. The friend lost everything. Then she disappeared. MGM came after Kelly for the debt. When she couldn't pay immediately, they called the police. A judge sent her to Clark County Detention Center. 21 days in a Las Vegas jail changed everything. The facility was overcrowded, violent. Other inmates attacked her during the first week. Guards refused her to let her wear her own underwear, some kind of regulation she never understood. The food was barely edible. Sleep came in fragments between screaming matches and cell checks. 25 pounds dropped from her frame in 3 weeks. She had entered the facility as a wealthy woman who had made a bad decision. She left as something else entirely. Release came only after relatives flew in from overseas with $100,000 in cash to satisfy the casino's debt. Walking out of that building into the Las Vegas sun, Kelly Sun made a vow. MGM had taken her money for years. She had given it willingly, stupidly, compulsively. But this was different. They had taken her dignity. They had locked her in a cage over a debt that wasn't even hers. Now, she would take everything back, every dollar, and she would do it in a way they could never prosecute. Somehow, she would find a way to beat them at their own game. The problem was mathematics. Baccarat can't be beaten. That was the universal truth of gambling. Unlike blackjack, there are no decisions to be made. Players bet on banker or player. The cards come out, and probability grinds you down over time. The house edge is small, around 1%, but it's permanent and inescapable. Card counting doesn't work because knowing what cards remain in the shoe doesn't help you. The game has no strategic choices. Every expert agreed, baccarat is pure luck. The house always wins eventually. Sitting alone in her cell during those 21 days, running the numbers in her head to stay sane, a different question had begun forming. What if the cards themselves contained information that nobody else could see? What if there was a flaw in the system, not in the rules of baccarat, but in the physical cards, that could be exploited by someone with the right eyes and the right patience? Playing cards are supposed to be identical from the back. Rotate one 180 degrees, and it should look exactly the same. Symmetrical patterns, uniform edges, no way to distinguish a 6 from a 9 without flipping it over. That's the theory. Manufacturing is messier. Some decks leave the factory with microscopic flaws, patterns printed slightly off-center, edges trimmed unevenly by fractions of an inch. After leaving jail, years of obsessive study followed. Different card manufacturers, different defects, different levels of exploitability. Some decks were worthless, perfectly symmetrical, impossible to read. Others had potential. Purple Jamaica cards, manufactured by a company in Kansas City, turned out to be perfect. The diamond pattern printed on the back was cut asymmetrically. One long edge looked subtly different from the other. The difference was perhaps 1/32 of an inch, invisible to almost everyone. But if you knew what to look for, and if the cards were oriented correctly, you could identify 6s, 7s, 8s, and 9s before they were dealt. In baccarat, those are the cards that matter most. The technique is called edge sorting. One massive problem remained. In mini baccarat, the version played in most casinos, players never touch the cards. Dealers handle everything. So, how do you get the cards rotated into readable positions without arousing suspicion? Kelly found the answer in casino culture itself. High rollers are famously superstitious. They have rituals, lucky charms, specific requests about how games should be conducted. Casinos accommodate these quirks because they want the whales to keep playing. A request to rotate certain cards for good luck would seem perfectly normal. Turn the sevens this way, it brings fortune. Flip the eights for feng shui. The dealers would smile and comply. The pit bosses would nod approvingly. And hand by hand, hour by hour, the deck would organize itself into something Kelly could read. Between 2006 and 2012, the system was tested and refined across the globe. Singapore, Macau, Monte Carlo, Montreal, Las Vegas. Winnings accumulated steadily, but never spectacularly. Without a massive bankroll, the edge sorting advantage, perhaps 5% over the house, could only generate modest returns. A few $100,000 here, a few $100,000 there. Enough to live well, not enough for revenge on the scale Kelly imagined. Casino surveillance teams began to notice something unusual. A Chinese woman who kept appearing at the baccarat tables and kept winning. They gave her a nickname in their internal reports, the Queen of Sorts. But how the trick actually worked remained a mystery. The cards weren't marked. No devices were detected. She never touched the deck. Security teams assumed she was just lucky, or perhaps involved in some scheme that they had not yet identified. The possibility that she had discovered a flaw in the cards themselves, a flaw invisible to everyone except her, never crossed their minds. Bill Zender has spent 40 years in the gaming industry as an advantage play consultant. His job is identifying threats to casinos. When asked to name the most dangerous player in the world, his answer surprises people. Not Phil Ivey, Kelly's son. The industry is sexist, Zender admits bluntly. Because she was a woman, because she was Asian, because she played baccarat instead of poker or blackjack, they simply denied she could be a real threat. That denial would prove extraordinarily expensive. But Kelly faced a ceiling she could not break through alone. Edge sorting requires enormous bets to generate enormous profits. A 5% advantage means almost nothing when you are betting $20 a hand. To make the kind of money that would constitute true revenge, someone needed to bet $50,000 per hand, $100,000. Kelly didn't have that kind of bankroll. What she needed was a partner, someone with unlimited funds and a famous face that would open doors at the most exclusive casinos in the world. In early 2012, Phil Ivey arrived in Australia for a major poker tournament. $6 million in winnings later, he wandered into a high-limit baccarat pit looking for new action. At the table, a petite Chinese woman struck up a conversation. She had a proposition. Fund her baccarat sessions, and she would show him how to beat a game that everyone knew was unbeatable. Ivey was skeptical. Professional gamblers hear pitches like this constantly. Con artists, dreamers, system sellers. Almost all of it is garbage. But something about her confidence was different. She didn't seem desperate. She seemed certain. Their first session together was a disaster. Kelly didn't recognize the card backs at the Australian casino. The edge sorting system failed completely. Ivey lost $500,000 in a matter of hours. He was furious. Most people would have walked away, written off the loss, never spoken to her again. Instead, Kelly made a request. Give me one night. Let me study these cards. We'll try again tomorrow. Against his better judgment, Ivey agreed. She spent the entire night examining the Australian card backs, memorizing their patterns, mapping their specific flaws. No sleep, just obsessive focus. The next day, same table, same dealer. Within 1 hour, the $500,000 came back. Then another million. Then another. By the end of the session, they were up $3.5 million. Someone from casino surveillance pulled Ivey aside afterward. They wanted to know, do you have any idea who that woman is? She is internationally famous. They call her the Queen of Sorts. Ivey looked at Kelly with new eyes. He had a different name for her now, the baccarat machine. From that point forward, they operated as partners. His bankroll and celebrity status opened every door. Her eyes and system did the rest. Singapore, Macau, Montreal, Monte Carlo, winnings piled up across 4 continents. The routine was always identical. Arrive in a new city, spend a day relaxing, hit the nightclub to establish the image of careless high rollers, then 2 or 3 days of intense, focused play. Cash out. Disappear before anyone could piece together what had happened. By the time casino executives compared notes, Ivey and Kelly were already on a private jet to the next target. April 2012, the Borgata Hotel Casino in Atlantic City. MGM Resorts owned 50% of the property. 6 years had passed since the jail cell. 6 years since Kelly lost 25 pounds while guards humiliated her and inmates attacked her. 6 years since she walked out into the Las Vegas sun and vowed revenge. The Borgata was not a random target. This was personal. Ivey negotiated the playing conditions without knowing the full history. Purple Jamaico cards, an automatic shuffling machine that would preserve card orientation, a Mandarin-speaking dealer so Kelly could make requests without other staff understanding, a private gaming room away from prying eyes. The Borgata agreed to everything. They saw a superstitious poker celebrity with too much money. They were setting up their own robbery. April 11th, plus $2,416,000. The casino paid without hesitation. May 3rd, plus $1,597,400. Another wire transfer, another invitation to return. July 17th, plus $4,787,700. The Borgata kept paying, kept smiling, kept sending cars to the airport. In August came a detour to London, Crockford's casino. 21 hours of play, £7.8 million in winnings. But when Ivey requested his chips be cashed, Crockford's hesitated. Something felt wrong. The winning percentage was impossible. They returned his original stake, but refused to pay the profits. An investigation had begun. Back in Atlantic City, October 2012, one final session at the Borgata produced another $824,900 in winnings. Some chips were intentionally lost back to reduce suspicion, a standard technique for avoiding too much heat. But it was already too late. Word had crossed the Atlantic. Crockford's had shared their suspicions. The Borgata rewound their own surveillance footage and started connecting dots across 4 separate visits. Total damage to their bottom line? Over $9 million in baccarat losses, plus another $500,000 from craps tables. Combined with Crockford's and casinos across the globe, Phil Ivey and Kelly's son had extracted more than $30 million from an industry that was supposed to be unbeatable. Now, the lawsuits began. Years of litigation followed on 2 continents. Ivey's defense was straightforward. Edge sorting is not cheating. No cards were physically marked. No devices were smuggled into the casino. The casino themselves introduced defective cards and agreed to every playing condition Ivey requested. Exploiting their own mistakes should be perfectly legal. Advantage play, not fraud. The casinos saw it differently, asking dealers to rotate cards under false pretenses, claiming superstition when the real purpose was gaining a mathematical edge, constituted deception. It didn't matter that no law had been technically broken. The intent was to deceive. In 2017, the UK Supreme Court delivered its final ruling. All 5 justices agreed. Edge sorting, as practiced by Ivey and Son, constituted cheating under British law. Not because it was illegal in the traditional sense, not because cards were marked or devices were used, but because they had taken positive steps to fix the deck, to arrange conditions that gave them an advantage the casino never intended to provide. The £7.8 million stayed with Crockford's. Ivey never saw a single pound. American courts reached a slightly different conclusion. A federal judge ruled that Ivey did not commit fraud. There was no dishonesty in the traditional sense, but he did breach his contract with the Borgata by violating New Jersey gambling regulations. Repayment of $10.1 million was ordered. Appeals continued for years until 2020, when both parties reached an undisclosed settlement. The exact terms were never made public. The judge in the Borgata case said it plainly. They didn't break baccarat, but they broke gambling as the state defines it. They found a flaw that was never meant to be used, and for that, they were punished. Phil Ivey went back to poker. Inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2017, his legacy split. Questioned by some, elevated by others. Kelly Sun disappeared almost completely. A 2017 profile showed a quiet Las Vegas life. Golf course views, a pool, closets filled with designer shoes. In rare interviews, she's detached. No excitement, no regret. Winning or losing means nothing for her, she said. Just work, precision, pattern recognition at the edge of human perception. Today, the vulnerability no longer exists. Card manufacturers check for asymmetries before shipping. Dealers are trained to refuse unusual requests about card handling, and the automatic shufflers randomize orientation. The window she found has been sealed.